The New Mexico sun burned low across the desert, painting the canyon walls in molten gold. Jack Colton rode hard, dust trailing behind his horse like smoke from a dying fire. He'd spent years drifting between ranches, fixing fences, breaking horses, and running from ghosts he never named. That afternoon, as the thunder rolled over the mesas, he saw the sky split open with sudden rain. A desert flash flood was coming fast, swallowing the dry gully ahead. In the torrent's path was a figure scrambling for higher ground, a young Apache woman. Without thinking, Jack spurred his horse forward. Water slammed against his boots, cold and fierce. The woman slipped, the current dragging her down. Jack reached, caught her wrist and hauled her onto his saddle. She gasped, coughing up river grit, her braids heavy with mud. When their eyes met, something ancient passed between them. Not gratitude, not fear, but recognition. For a heartbeat, the desert fell silent except for their ragged breaths. When the flood receded, the girl motioned him to follow. Jack hesitated. He'd saved people before, settlers, strangers, and they'd always sent him away after a thank you. But she looked back only once, a quiet command in her gaze. He followed her across the canyon into a small Apache encampment hidden among cottonwoods. Smoke curled from the fires, and the air smelled of sage and wet earth. Her people watched him in wary silence, their spears lowered but ready. She spoke to the elders in her tongue, quick and low. When she pointed to him, voices rose. Jack couldn't understand, but he felt the tension ease, then shift into something else, expectation. The eldest woman approached and touched his chest lightly, right over his heart, then said something to the others. The people nodded. Jack felt suddenly like a man standing on ground that was no longer his own. As the fire cracked, the girl returned, now dressed in a ceremonial robe of doeskin and turquoise beads that shimmered in the dusk. She stood before him and said in careful English, "You saved my life. Now the spirits say your blood and mine must join, for balance." Jack blinked. "Join?" he asked. She gave a small smile. "Marriage," she said, as though the word were both promise and sentence. Jack laughed nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake. I ain't—" But before he could finish, the elder raised a hand. "When the river takes and gives back," she said slowly, "it ties what cannot be untied." Jack didn't know what that meant, but he felt every eye on him, and Naya's gaze most of all. Something in him softened, some frontier loneliness that words could never mend. "All right," he murmured, "if that's what the spirits want." Drums began to beat, soft at first, like the echo of his own heart. Smoke drifted through the air, sweet with sage and cedar. Naya stepped closer, tracing a small mark on his wrist with red earth. "Now we are bound," she whispered. Her eyes were calm, certain. Jack's pulse hammered. He'd faced bandits, storms, even death, but never this quiet intensity. When the elders chanted, he bowed his head, thinking it a simple ritual of gratitude. Then, through the flickering light, two more figures appeared, women dressed like Naya, their faces marked with the same crimson paint. They were nearly her reflection, yet each distinct. One carried fire in her stance, the other laughter in her eyes. Jack stared, confused. The eldest woman gestured to them and said, "3 hearts, 1 bond." Jack blinked again, thinking he'd misheard. "Wait, 3?" he stammered. Naya turned to him, serene as the river after rain. "My sisters," she said, "we share one vow. One heart cannot balance without the others." The crowd hummed in approval, the drums quickening. Jack's mouth went dry. He'd agreed too fast. Chasing politeness or fate, he wasn't sure which. The ceremony continued. Each sister placed a hand on his, first Naya, then Lita with her fierce gaze, and Taya, whose smile was as bright as morning sun. They tied strands of woven leather around his wrist, sealing the bond. Jack stood frozen, his mind a tumble of disbelief. Somewhere deep inside, the cowboy who'd wandered alone for years felt the universe shifting beneath his boots. As night deepened, the tribe feasted. Fires blazed, laughter echoed through the canyon. Jack sat between the 3 sisters, feeling like a man both blessed and doomed. They spoke softly among themselves, sometimes looking his way and smiling. He tried to eat, but his stomach twisted. The eldest woman leaned toward him and said, "You are part of our circle now. Protect it, and it will protect you." When the firelight dimmed and the stars took their place, Naya sat beside him. "You didn't know?" she asked gently. He chuckled under his breath. "No, ma'am. I figured I was marrying one woman, not three." She tilted her head. "Then the spirits chose well. A man who expects one path must learn to walk three." Her words carried no mockery, only quiet truth. Jack looked up at the desert sky, wide and merciless, and felt something strange stir inside him. Fear, maybe, or wonder. Around him, the sisters sang a soft melody that mingled with the night wind. It wasn't the life he'd imagined, but as Naya's hand brushed his, he found he couldn't look away. Somewhere between mistake and destiny, he'd found something he didn't know he was searching for. When dawn came, the desert stretched endless and golden before them. Jack stood beside his horse, the three sisters watching from the fire's edge. For the first time in years, he felt tethered, not by duty or guilt, but by choice. He tipped his hat toward them, and Naya smiled. "Husband," she said, the words slow and certain on her tongue. Jack managed a grin, half sheepish, half awed. "Guess that makes me the luckiest fool in New Mexico." And somewhere beyond the horizon, the spirits laughed, knowing the real journey had only just begun. The first light of dawn spilled across the desert, turning the canyon walls gold and copper. Jack Colton woke to the sound of laughter, soft, musical, drifting through the camp. The three sisters were already awake, moving like the wind, one tending the fire, one grinding maize, one braiding her long hair. He sat up slowly, wondering if the night before had been a dream. But the red mark still burned faintly on his wrist, proof enough that it was real. The tribe called him husband of the three moons. He didn't know whether to feel honored or terrified. Life among the Apache was nothing like the world he'd known. Days were long and harsh, filled with work and watchful eyes. Some of the men still didn't trust him, and Jack couldn't blame them. He'd spent his life among settlers who called these people savages. Now he was one of them, bound by their law and blood. Naya, the eldest sister, guided him through the rhythms of their life, teaching him their words, their ways, their patience. She spoke softly, but there was strength beneath her calm. Lita, the second sister, was the opposite, fierce and sharp-tongued, quick to challenge him. She rode horses faster than any man in the camp and never missed her mark with a bow. "You're too soft," she'd tell him when he hesitated before a hunt. "A man must face death with steady hands." Jack only smiled. "I've faced death plenty," he'd say. "It's marriage that's got me nervous." She never laughed, but her eyes softened all the same. Taya, the youngest, was pure light, always singing, always smiling. She'd sit near him at night, pointing at the stars and naming them in Apache and English, her laughter echoing through the dark. Sometimes Jack forgot where he was when she smiled. But then he'd look at Naya, her calm gaze steady as the moon, and remember, this wasn't a dream or a game. This was life now, a balance between three hearts and one uncertain future. As weeks turned to months, Jack began to belong, not just tolerated, but accepted. He hunted with the men, helped rebuild shelters after a storm, even learned to carve bone tools under Naya's watch. Still, whispers followed him. Some said the spirits were testing the tribe, that no man could carry three hearts without one breaking. Others said he'd brought bad luck, that white blood had no place among them. Jack heard it all in silence. He wasn't sure what the spirits thought of him either. One evening, while gathering wood near the river, Jack overheard voices, angry, low, and close. He crept closer, crouching behind a mesquite bush. Two young warriors stood there, their words heavy with bitterness. "He stole our women," one said. "Even the shaman cannot change what's been done." The other spat into the dust. "The spirits will take him soon enough. The land will see to that." Jack's gut twisted. He'd thought the danger was gone, but in the Wild West, peace was always temporary. That night, Naya found him staring into the fire. "You heard them," she said quietly. He nodded. "They're right to be angry," he murmured. "I never meant to take what wasn't mine." She looked at him then, long and deep. "You didn't take," she said. "You were chosen. The river claimed you when it spared you both. Jack smiled sadly. I reckon the river didn't ask if I was ready. Naya placed a hand over his heart. The spirits never ask. They only lead. Days later, the tribe prepared for the harvest ceremony, a sacred time when old wounds were meant to heal. The air buzzed with life, drums echoing through the canyon. Jack helped gather food, trying to ignore the unease crawling under his skin. That night, as the fires burned high, the three sisters danced, Naya graceful as the wind, Lita fierce as flame, Taya radiant as dawn. Jack watched, his chest tight with something beyond love, beyond fear. They were beauty and balance made flesh. Then the sky broke. A shout rang out. One of the jealous warriors had drawn his knife, his eyes wild with rage. Jack saw the glint too late. The blade flashed, cutting through the air. He lunged, tackling the man to the ground, the knife slicing across his arm. Pain seared through him, hot and bright. Naya cried out. Lita leapt forward, wresting the weapon away, her fury thunderous. The camp erupted in chaos, but Jack's only thought was the blood dripping into the dust, his blood dark under the firelight. When the fight ended, silence settled heavy as smoke. The elders gathered. The wounded warrior was banished, his shame written in his eyes. Jack's arm was wrapped tight with deerskin, his pulse weak but steady. As the fire burned low, Naya knelt beside him. You bled for us, she whispered. Now you are truly ours. He managed a faint grin. Didn't know there was another ceremony, he rasped. Taya laughed softly through tears. This one, she said, the spirits wrote themselves. The next morning the tribe moved to higher ground. Jack rode at the front, the three sisters beside him. The air smelled of rain and sage, clean and alive. He didn't know what tomorrow held, maybe a lifetime, maybe a day. But as he glanced at the women who had turned his world upside down, he felt something rare in his chest. Peace. Not the restless kind that drifters chase, but the deep, steady kind that comes when a man finally stops running. Under the New Mexico sun, the cowboy who once had no home now rode with three hearts, three spirits, one bond sealed by fate. And somewhere beyond the mesas, the wind carried their laughter, the sound of love defying every law the Wild West had ever known.